Good morning and Happy New Year. Hannele, Niemi, Tapiovaris, and Maria Cristina Migliora. I'm happy
Good
to
morning, Astrid.
I'm happy to have you here. Today we are going to talk with you, Hannele, about your UNESCO chair. Congratulations, which you received in 2017.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Indeed. In fact, my term is starting just now, this January 2018 until 2021. And the decision made 2017. And thank you for giving this opportunity to tell about my area being chair at UNESCO. And you mentioned already my topic, which is educational ecosystem for equity and quality of learning. And maybe it's good that I little open these concepts, what they are, because I think that this whole title is quite long and there are several angles to approach this theme. So is it now opportunity to me to give a short lecture? You think so, that, or in which way you hope that we could proceed?
Yes, why don't you start with the lecture and then we will, if you don't mind, we could ask along the way, but mainly in the end we will have a short dialogue.
Right, thank
Yeah?
you. And indeed, if you have any questions when I'm speaking, please just interrupt me, because some concepts may be something what would need more clarification. So this ecosystem thinking has now become very common concept in several disciplines. It originally comes from biology, where ecosystem has been used when describing, for example, forest or some natural environment connections between different part of world, even under the sea, or even also in those areas where are big climate changes. Anyway, if you use this concept, what is has now used also very much in healthcare and veterinary, there are some common issues, features, why we use that concept outside the biology. Important features are interconnectedness, and secondly, there are information flow between different part and partners, and thirdly, there are big diversity. And these three elements are all the time in interaction, and they make possible very many living conditions. But we also know how vulnerable can some ecosystems be. So in that sense, we can't directly move that concept to education, but why we can use that. When we're thinking ecosystem, we have to see that there are huge amount of different actors and partners and institutions that are working together. And in that sense, interconnectedness, how they work together is very essential point if we want to have high quality learning. And that is something which is also make difference when we compare with biological system or environmental issues. In biological system, there are not any kind of communal aims, conscious objectives, how to make some processes working. But in education, we have to think all the time, what is the aim? Basically, education is always aiming at something. There are objectives, how we can create better world, how we can educate people, how can we give more learning opportunities to everyone. And in that sense, education means that there must be also clear and targeted mission how we want to go to the future. And in that sense, educational ecosystem put a lot of emphasis how people work together. And I think what is also in UNESCO aim for sustainable development in the aims for 2030. Strong emphasis on education and how educate many things for our sustainable development world. And when I use this ecosystem, the concept, that means basically that when we hope to make changes in our world and in the future, we have to do that together. We have to be interconnected. We have this information flow, what I could use also as a term communication, what Tapio very often used. And then also we have to accept diversity and understand what does that mean when we are educating, trying to keep learning opportunities in different world. There are so huge diversity culturally, historically. We have to take this into consideration to make our as clear as possible how we can create good and even better learning experience for everyone. So this ecosystem is the basic condition that we can aim at equity and quality of learning. Now we can see that there are huge difficulties to aim quality of learning. Just a couple of months ago, World Bank published very dramatic report about the condition of learning part of the world. And we can that there are still hundreds of million children who can't get access to education. And if they got access, they can't go further to second level. If they have access to primary level, then they don't have access to even a lower secondary level. Why they is because they don't learn anything in school. They don't learn after 40 years even to read or even to count very elementary task in math. And that means that they have now access to school, but they have real good teaching or opportunities to learn there. And that is something what we have now to understand, that the failure of students is not basically their own fault. The failure of learning and failure of student is very much depending on these ecosystems what have created to education. And when we speak about these different systems in education, we can see that there are different levels. There are, at least we can recognize 3 levels. There are very wide system level institutions or different kind structures in society for education. This system level means, for example, educational structure, how that gives opportunities to all children, not only for some special group, for all children, so that they can continue their learning from elementary level to secondary level, and then also further even adult learning opportunities, so that they really have lifelong learning opportunities. This structure can be so different in different countries that it cut these opportunities very early stage. At 10 years old or even lower level, because students drop out from the system because they can't get those objectives what have set them, and then they are really only dropping out from the system. That was also in Finland about 45 years ago. We had to make decision at 10 years old whether the students continue to more academic road or vocational road, and it divided our nation even totally to two groups, elite education groups and those who didn't have that. But we changed that the late 60s last century, and that makes a huge change in our society. And we can see that in many other countries who have taken this kind of approach, that don't cut too early students' opportunity to continue education. That is the basic welfare also to the whole society. Even that also is the basic conditions for quality of life of those students. Then when we're thinking those big system-wide structures, we can see also that in each country there are also some curriculum system where is set objectives for education. And then there is another system, which is evaluation system, how students and educational system are evaluated. And that is the most essential point if we are thinking students' learning opportunity. If this curriculum system is something which can't be seen relevant for students in their local needs, that means that the students and their parents can't understand why they have learned these issues. And that is something what we now in this educational ecosystem, we try to make more and more visible how this national or maybe in the future even global curriculum thinking should be constructed in such a way that students really and teachers also can understand why these issues are important and what is needed to make education more relevant for students. What are the life skills they need? What kind of knowledge they need? Because there are huge amount also knowledge which is all the time coming old-fashioned and should be updated. Then comes the question related to curriculum, in which way that should lead to those kind of skills and competencies that students can learn also in the future and have those very important relevant skills they need for constructing their own knowledge base also in the future. When I mention these evaluation system, that means that there are different systems in different countries. Either nobody is really knowing what are the outcomes. That is big problem. Then when something should be developed, nobody is really knowing by evidence-based, what are the most important areas to be developed. Then in some other countries, evaluation is mainly high-stake testing, which means that students are all the time and teachers under testing pressure, and then they have to prepare all the time for testing, and they are judging, they are ranking, but this ranking does not help anyone to develop the system. And therefore, I would recommend and very much emphasize enhancement based evaluation system, which means that all the time the main important target is how we can improve and help someone to learn better or make better educational services or give more opportunities to different learners. And then comes very much to inclusive education, that how we take different kinds of students who also have learning difficulties into account and help them, because only assessing and giving marks or giving ranks or those different kinds of orders how education, I think also in PISA results we have used them in many ways in wrong way, if we are thinking only that the most important thing is get these ranking orders. The most important thing is that we could have evidence in which way we could make something better, use that for national development, and then in global context also in global development. But this evaluation system and curriculum system both are very big structural macro level system issues, and these are also connected to teacher education, how teachers are educated, and these different parts, curriculum system, evaluation system, and teacher education are interconnected, and these are also in continuous communication, how they work for better learning opportunities. When we speak about better learning opportunities, we have to see that education is not finishing when students are at certain age. Then we have to think also what is their further opportunities. And then comes working life and lifelong learning opportunities. How these different subsystems are creating parts for good lifelong learning roads, and really have opportunities that students know that they can also continue their education, and that makes also educational structure more, I could say, merciful, if they can see that even they fail at certain level, they still have opportunities to continue, so they are never dropping out. So the structural level are so important, and they have huge impact on what happens in schools and what happens in micro level. When I speak about those levels, macro level, mid-level system, and micro level system, I could see that there is also this mid-level, which means mainly institutions like schools, universities, higher education institutions, working life institutions. Then we are speaking about what is learning and teaching culture there, how inclusive that is, how teachers can really promote learning for different types and different kinds of students. We have to see also that at mid-level, very much is depending on the school, the whole ethos in which way different students are supported. And I have seen that in some countries, in fact, in especially in Asian countries, special need support is some kind of shame. That it's something, it's better to neglect that my children don't have all the same high level skills than others, and they need some special help. And I would like to promote the idea that every children can learn well, or at least for their own living conditions very well, if they are supported. And in which they are supported, we have nowadays huge amount of different ways to do that, but we have to accept that it's important to give this support, and it's not shame to have support. In Finland, we have very natural that students have special need support, and their students know that, and parents know that, and teachers know that. In some countries, when I speak about special need support and special need education, I can't use this term special need education. I have learned to use personalized support or personalized education, because it's not stigmatization concept what is these learning difficulties and how to support students. Then if I finally go to this micro level, we can see that there is also systems, and then we are speaking about individual students, what are their system around them. They have also parents, they have hobbies, they have their peers, there are social media among they are living. They are the subsystems around individual learners. And then there are also what they have already learned, and in which way they have already learned. And how we can use these different life areas as resources for students, individual students in their own learning, that they become more empowered. They can see that, oh, I can learn much in my hobbies, I can learn with my peers, I can learn outside the school, and I can learn certainly also in schools. But I think that we need also this kind of understanding that these children we are teaching in schools, they have their own micro level systems, and that affects their behavior and also their learning opportunities in school environment. And I think that very often we have used to think that if students fail in school, that is their own fault, and it's students' own skill who make that failure. When thinking from ecosystem perspective, we can see that major affecting factors are at macro level, the whole system, the relevant curriculum, the evaluation system, and then also at school level, what is the ethos of school, in which way that is inclusive. And then it's very minor what students really are affecting their own outcomes, learning outcomes. And that is something I hope that we could understand, that changing these bigger structures, being also inside the schools more inclusive, then we can help all students. So what I'm trying in my chair, I hope that I could work in cooperation with other partners, with other educational people, but also with people who are in educational policy level or macro level policy level. Even I think that if we are making conditions for learning, then we should have also healthcare and social issues working together. So that means that at ministry level, there should be more cooperation between Ministry of Education, Ministry of Social Affairs, Ministry of Health, and also those who are responsible for working life. Which means that also local level these partners should work together. So all in all, I think that the educational ecosystem needs more and more cooperation, interconnectedness, information flow, which means also communication for both direction, vertically and also horizontally, and then accepting diversity of our human beings. So that's my lecture today, and thank you for your attention, and I really hope that you make questions to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannele. It was very clear what your thoughts are and the aims for your chair. Very well done. Shall we start with Tapio? You know Hannele from before, and you have a UNESCO chair yourself. So would you like to give some feedback to Hannele, but also give some feedback on on your experiences of having a UNESCO chair? What does this mean for Hannele and her work? How can it support her work?
Thank you, Hannele, for the very extensive, brief, but very condensed, good presentation. I admire your work as always. I would like to take a couple of points that Hannele mentioned that links my work and all of us in this whole World Ed society. First of all, she, beginning with the communication aspect, which Hannele was stressing the importance of, for example, different ministries to communicate between themselves and then working life and academia and so forth. This has been a problem in my field always, that there is when we have a holistic approach like the UNESCO 2030 goal of education, it's very holistic, and the one that I presented last time in my own short presentation, the whole concept of education in a new philosophical light, it emphasizes something that will only increase the importance of communication, because we know, and I have been struggling through this 40 years or 45 years, that there is no communication even between the disciplines. Hannele pointed out that the origin of ecosystem comes from biology. And this is a very good observation, that we can bring feasible working concepts from other disciplines and develop and apply them in other fields. But how does it work in a broader context? And how do we communicate particularly between, say, natural science and human science scholars and intellectuals? Can they really communicate properly to bring, as was pointed out by Hannele, for education which is always aiming at something? I have been saying it's a value-based activity, objective. We always educate for something. It has a goal which is decided and determined by human criteria. How does it communicate with the people coming from natural sciences or engineering sciences? And one thing, for example, when Love comes to talk with us sometime, Love is also, as a UNESCO chair, he is involved in system thinking. And my chair and my work as a UNESCO chair has always been connected to technology, not only to communication and education, but also to technology, which I still keep. the connection between technology, science, and then also the spiritual human values, and even the art, the beauty, the harmony. And this holistic Renaissance approach is something that is the essence I see is still relevant. For example, when Hannele spoke about the concepts, which she brings so many and applies them to teacher education, particularly school level, I have been involved in my work in some concepts that are beyond my own capacity. I'm a social scientist, education, communication scholar. But in my work, UNESCO chair, we have at the moment, and this is what Astrid knows from Takeshi Utsumi and my colleagues in New York, and even my own lecture in Columbia University, which is the base of my work now, we are faced with the concepts of what my colleagues call decision engineering intelligence methodology. So decision intelligence, it's a system analytic concept that when you do some choices, including education, but it could include many other fields, from agriculture to environment. All these decisions affect other fields, and this systemic approach is something very demanding. And can we when we speak about working life and education, how do we extend the education to decision makers? This is something beyond school level, but this is all included, and that is why I think that the cooperation with Hannele's broad, extensive, and deep-going analysis of education is very good, connecting different sectors. But I don't know how do we convince engineering and technology people to come close enough to understand. Maybe this is an ongoing dialogue we can develop further. And I just wanted this is my positive reaction to the joining of Hannele. I think we can work fruitfully. At least I'm willing to work as much as needed together to help the project succeed, and the extensive experience and work that Hannele is doing at the moment in China. But I want to say, because you don't know, the others don't know, but Hannele is also a chair, the president of the University of Lapland board, which extends to the northern region, and it extends nicely our work into regionally northern part of not only Europe but the whole Arctic region. Maybe this is enough for a comment on the first very positive reactions. Thank you, Hannele.
Thank you, Tapio, and that brings us to the next seminar, which is on the day of the National Day of the Sami people, which will be in February. But Maria Kristina, what have you been thinking about since Hannele told about her theme?
I found your presentation, Hannele, very interesting, and also the feedbacks from Tapio. So many points that could be worth of discussion. Maybe I could start with the concept of ecosystem. And what you have said, Hannele, that nature works as an ecosystem. And if I have understood correctly, you have said that nature doesn't have aims. So I find I find here a little contradiction. I mean, if we want, and I think it's a very good idea to use this concept of ecosystem thinking to change or to improve, to enhance the educational system. But I think we should take the challenge that the concept launches to us. That is that maybe in this is really a question. I don't have an answer, okay? But if we want to use this concept of ecosystem, shouldn't we abandon our emphasis on aims when we talk with education? I understand that we can have the aim of improving life on this earth. You mentioned something like this, Hannele. But I know that in our schools, they have a lot of aims and goals because the curriculum has to be followed. So isn't there a contradiction? Maybe we would need pedagogical approaches which have less emphasis on aims and more on activities. And here I bring something from Vygotsky. Because focusing on activities, all the activities that we need in our life to carry on our life, activities need knowledge, need competencies, need skills. So the concept of activities could be more holistic than curriculum and aims, and therefore all the culture of testing. Yes, I wanted to say something more about activities, but now, yes, I lost it. Yes, I'm not an expert on pedagogies, the different approaches, pedagogical approaches that have already been developed by pedagogists. But I'm sure there are already some pedagogies which are more close to this ecosystem thinking. Yes, this is the first point that I wanted to make. The other one, I really agree with you, Hannele, and also Tapio, you have mentioned the problem of working life, the problem of giving further educational opportunities to adults, so that really we can develop lifelong learning. But this bring the employers on the scene. So I really agree with you that education implies many different actors and partners, and we need to change it together. And so about adult education, we need employers. And I know that there are, in your countries, in France, employers are more willing to support the education of workers. Here in Italy, no. And Italy have really a lot of problems about education. you may know that from the PIAC, I don't know if you pronounce PIAC, the OECD survey.
Yeah.
Okay. From that survey, Italy emerges as a country with low level of education. And we would need to invest much more on education. And here I would like to just to mention that in Italy, since 2015, we have a new law which has introduced work-based learning in the whole upper secondary school. And it is really interesting because in the upper secondary school now students have to spend 200 hours and in the or 40 hundreds hours in the last 3 years of the upper secondary school in workplaces or in activities which are close to the working life. And it is here in my Institute of Research, we are trying to understand how this law is being implemented in our schools in my region. And it's really interesting how it's difficult for our schools and teachers to change and to connect their teaching activities to the experiences that their students are carrying out in these hours of work-based learning. So it's really, it's a challenge. And then the last mention that I want to make is that since last year, I'm involved in evaluation of that policies. And because you mentioned something about evaluating policies. Yes, and so now I'm involved in this. It's quite interesting to evaluate policies with counterfactual methods, but I think I can stop here. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Maria Cristina, for the comments. We could sit here for days discussing. I think actually I will. We do not have many minutes left, like 5 minutes. I think we should give the word back to you, Hannele, and if you could choose some to comment the first things that is in your mind after listening to Tapio and Maria Cristina.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for those comments. Very important to me and for also clarifying my own thoughts about educational ecosystem. First of all, to Tapio's comments, you mentioned that holistic approach is very demanding and we have difficulties to get different partners work together. I really hope that we could organize that kind of seminars or platforms where we get these different partners to discuss together how that could happen so that we could get those who are responsible for educational structures, policymakers who are responsible also for society level, health and working life, employment issues, how we could together look for the future. What would be the platform? what could be that be a conference in Finland or in Paris or somewhere. I think that that's something I really hope that we could together do that in around and inside the UNESCO. Then secondly, when Maria Christina mentioned about aims, and I agree that in many countries there are thousands of aims, and it's like a jungle of different measurable aims. I think that the basic issue is what is the vision of your future and how education is working for that vision. Small aims are sometimes hiding the major purpose to which we are targeting at. I think that those countries very strong testing culture, they are testing small details and they are based on those aims. But what I think is the most important, what is the most important and relevant skills and knowledge based for the future. And that is much bigger vision than short term, very small aims. And that comes then to the holistic approach, what Tapio was emphasizing. When I mention this biology, and I mentioned that that is not aiming at certain conscious targets. In natural environments, many things are depending with what species can take, governance of engineering the processes. So that means that that is not so conscious decision making process what is in human life. And in human life, as Tapio mentioned, this decision making process, that is something one need also in education and society level and school level, how certain decisions have consequences to the other decisions. And what I think is important tool for that is communication and discussing more and more about what is the vision of education for the future, what are those values we need, what are the skills we are needed, what is the knowledge base we need. And in all these issues, I really hope that we could work together, organize some networks, some platforms, conferences, or writing some book, or what you think. But I think that is something I leave for our further elaborations and reflections what we can do. But I would be very glad to work with you for these aims or visions I have in my chair. Thank you for this morning. It has been wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you very much, Hannele, for sharing everything with us. We will now end this seminar, and I will now stop the recording. And so if you please just don't leave right away.